Brexit, the European Union, the UK. How do I think we're progressing? Well, you've had all my views on the previous videos I've sent out on Brexit. And quite honestly, as I've said before, I think our government managed the whole process very badly and have really just created confusion. The media haven't helped in the process, and we've allowed ourselves to get really stuck in this situation where no one seems to know how we're going to get this resolved by March next year when we leave. Now, I think part of our problem is that people in government and in the civil service have got so used to being part of the EU in majority cases, they can't think outside the box. They can't think about Brexit being positive. They all seem to see Brexit as being negative, the negative impacts it's going to have on the UK. Whereas the people that voted Brexit, which were the sort of 54% of the country, the electorate, they voted to leave because they see it as a positive move. The UK then gets its sovereignty back. They have control of their borders. They can now create their own laws. They can now trade with anywhere in the world without any restrictions being applied by Brussels. So all those positives are quite key in making a success of Brexit. What's the angle that the government have taken this, and where the majority of the media have taken this, is down a different route. Of all the negatives that are going to be put in place with leaving the European Union, the fact that things are going to be more expensive, the fact that we aren't going to be able to move easily between the UK and Europe, all just the negatives, the reasons actually why we wanted to come out of Europe in the first place. And there are also people that look at the situation of Brexit in a negative way and see us executing Brexit as going backwards, going back to what life was like before we joined the EU, or the common market as it was in those days. Now, when we joined the common market, I was a very young man. So it was, life across the world was different then. The world was a different place. The world was a larger place. It made sense in many respects to be trading with Europe in a common market to make life easier in terms of product availability. So in those days, trading with Europe, and only with Europe first, made a lot of sense. Now, the EU has developed into a lot more things since then in terms of how it wants to form this sort of common ground of republic, and how they want to develop their own military power, and how they want, obviously the euro's already there. I mean, there's a lot has progressed since then, which the UK didn't go for, which nobody voted for. So things have changed. But the point I want to make about when we were last out of Europe, it was a very long time ago, and the world was very different. Today, the world is much closer. Countries throughout the world are much closer. You get to these countries far quicker than you could before we joined the EU or the common market. Communication links are far better. Technology has moved on significantly. So the world has become a much smaller place in many respects. So, when you want to talk to countries the other side of the world, like Australia, it's very easy to do so. I also think England, Britain, the UK, being an English-speaking country, has closer links and closer ties with other English-speaking countries, quite honestly. We've never been a close association with France, who speak a different language. We've never been a close association with Germany, who speak another language. We've never been a close association with Spain, who speak another language, and so on and so on and so on. Britain has very close links and ties with other parts of the world that speak English. And I think those ties have been difficult to maintain from a trading point of view because of the EU. Because we've always had that problem of being able to bring cheaper products into the country because of the tariffs applied by the EU. So I've been very clear on what I think is happening. People who speculate things are going to get worse look at it from that angle. They start with the end in means, that they say, right, it's going to be worse. This is why it's going to be worse. And then people on the positive side of Brexit obviously start with the end in mind as well. Of it's going to be better, and this is why it's going to be better. Now, I think on the process of, because we've voted to go into Brexit and have this Brexit, we've got to look at it from that positive angle of why we're going in with a Brexit and why we should start with the end in mind of being positive. Now, what the government have done is they've gone in with a negative mindset to Brexit. Although we've voted to come out of the European Union, they've gone in and they've said, but we want to try and keep our relationships with the EU. We want to be able to do all the things that we currently do with the EU, and we want to do all these things, and at the same time we want to be able to do everything the same with the rest of the world. You can't do that because the EU have forced everyone to join this very exclusive club, which says, to be in this club, these are the conditions. And that's why we want to come out. We want to come out because we want to improve our lifestyle for the UK. We want to improve our trading abilities with the rest of the world. And we want to obviously maintain a relationship with Europe and bring Europe along with us. So it's, if you get my meaning, the situation has become very, very confusing in terms of where our government sit with it. Now, Boris has made his points very clear, and I don't have to cover those again. But what I would say is that there's a lot of scaremongering still coming out of Remainers, making the points continually that we're going to be worse off, and we're going to be Little Britain, and we're going to be in a situation where opportunities are going to be taken away from us, and people are going to lose their jobs, and people are going to have less money in their pockets to spend, disposable income. And it's going to be more difficult for them to travel in Europe, and it's going to be more difficult for them to. The whole thing is really ridiculous. And how does anybody know? I mean, if you remain or if you stay, how? How do they know? Because no one knows. Even if this Brexit issue wasn't going on, we know companies move on, technology moves on, people move on, jobs get lost because of companies closing down for many reasons, and so many things happen in the world these days that make it very, very difficult to speculate what the future really will be. All I can say is the world today is very different to what it was before we went into the EU. The world is a smaller place. Therefore, we cannot live in isolation as the European Union with the rest of the world on the outside. We have to embrace the world as a whole. I think the EU is too protective of its manufacturers, producers, suppliers within the EU. It cannot be competitive with some countries in Africa, some countries in Asia, some countries in South America. Therefore, it forces those products out of our market because it puts high tariffs on them. That can't work. It can never work, and it shouldn't work. Look, I'm not in favour at all in terms of how President Donald Trump is going about managing his economy with putting America first. But I understand his logic. I understand his reason. And I can see the sense of what he's attempting to do. I just don't agree with really the process he's following to get there. But I do understand that. And I think with the UK and Europe, it's a similar situation that we should be processing forward. We should be taking Brexit on fully. And we should be the ones saying we're walking away. And it should be the European Union saying, well, look, don't walk away totally. Stay on board with this. We will give you this in terms of opportunity for trading free or opportunity to move across certain borders or whatever the case may be. But we don't want you to leave altogether. We want you to remain on board. But we don't have a problem with you trading with the rest of the world at your own tariff rates. I mean, that's what we've got to be forcing forward with. The EU should be following our lead, and not us trying to be, if you like, in harmony with their thinking. It should be the other way around in this case, because we're the ones that have pressed the button to leave. So we should be leaving. We should be leaving, and we should be going forward. I'll obviously be talking more about this as we go on in the coming weeks leading up to March next year. But that's all I've got to say for now. Okay, talk to you later.